Hello and welcome back to the Paranormal Podcast. My name is Dan Pasella, co-founder, lead investigator for Orange County, New York Paranormal. And here we are, our 10th episode of the podcast. Nice to hit those double digits. Thank you for tuning in and listening. Every week, more and more folks listening to the podcast. It's great to see. As we get to our 10th episode, how many more people we have tuning in and listening. So thank you for the continued support. If you're new to the proceedings, thank you so much. Make sure to like, rate, and review on the audio podcast platform of your choice that you're listening to us on. But there is also a video version of the podcast that streams on our YouTube channel and on our Facebook page, just a video component to the podcast. Same content, but just you get to see my pretty face while I'm doing it. And on top of us being on Facebook and on Instagram, and on YouTube, we are also now on TikTok. I gave in, and at the suggestion of some of the younger folks who follow us, we did start a TikTok page. We haven't done much with it yet, but it's Orange County, New York, on TikTok, and looking forward to doing more with that. We literally just started it a couple of days ago. So all kinds of places you can find us, all kinds of places that a lot of you folks have found us. And it's great. So here's to many more episodes and many more people listening. And introduction over. Let's dive right into the things we want to talk about today. So now that we've been doing this for a while, we thought it'd be good to bring some of the questions that we've been getting to the forefront. Do a mailbag episode, if you will, and talk about them. Not just questions we've gotten at all the events that we do, but questions that have also come through the podcast, through comments on our videos, things that we are asked a lot. And we are going to do a series of these episodes sporadically over time. But we did an event at Bark Eater Chocolates a little while ago, and those are always so much fun. And that one's a lot of fun because it's sitting around the fire with s'mores and asking questions and talking about the paranormal, and then actually going in and doing a little bit of a ghost hunt event there, which is a lot of fun. And again, we got great questions from the people who came. And today, what I wanted to do is take some questions that we have gotten through the podcast, through events, and address them here and talk about them and answer them, because they may very well be questions that you have for not only for us, but for folks who investigate the paranormal. And then after we talk about the questions that we've gotten, I also want to talk about our latest investigation review episode that came out. The Seneca Falls Historical Society video came out last week. And thank you so much for the response on that. It's been great to see the views and the comments and everything. And I want to talk about a little behind the scenes on that video. So if you did see that video, I will put a link to it in the description of the podcast episode. But if you saw that video, or if you haven't yet, you definitely want to check it out either before the second half of this episode or after it, because what I want to provide is a little bit of behind the scenes, behind the curtain stuff that happened during that investigation that we didn't talk about so much in the episode, but just a little bit of insight into some of the things that we captured and the investigation overall, because it was a fascinating investigation, and we got some really good evidence from it. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to start by answering your questions that you have sent to us or asked us, and then talk about our latest investigation episode. The first question is one we get every single time we do an event. Without fail, we get asked, what is your favorite location that you have investigated? And that is not a straightforward response. It is not. It is very tricky for us. It's very tough for us to do that because, man, there have been so many that we've loved and so many great locations we've gone to. I mean, if you look at our investigation episodes, it's pretty easy to tell where some of our favorite ones are. For example, I mean, if we've gone there multiple times, yeah, it's somewhere we really like to go. You could put Grapevine Farms up there as one of our favorite places to investigate because we've done it so many times. We've done so many events there. Worcester Inn was wonderful while it was still open. And there's a lot of places, but it's not necessarily the locations that are our favorite or are not our favorite. It's the type of location that we like to go to. I am a big fan of the diamond in the rough locations. Like, yes, there are some iconic haunted locations all over the country, and even in our neck of the woods. You know, the Shanley Hotel, for example, which is in our part of New York, very famous, very popular. A lot of events, a lot of paranormal stuff going on there, a lot of shows, a lot of everything. That's well known. Rolling Hills Asylum, well known. I love going to a location that doesn't get investigated all the time. It's awesome. There are challenges with being the first group to investigate somewhere, but man, I love it when we are the first group to go somewhere. It doesn't happen often, but the kind of location I like is a location that just hasn't been over investigated, where the ownership actually cares about what we're finding, when the management wants to sit down with us, wants to talk to us about the things that we are discovering, when they tell us stories and say, look, I would love to know more of what's going on. Can you ask this question? Can you ask this question? Those are the ones that mean the most to us, because, you know, we are paranormal investigators. We do not consider ourselves ghost hunters. There is a difference. I could do an entire podcast episode on the difference between the two. But we are not looking for a picture of a spirit. We are not looking for a recording of a spirit. Sure, we're trying to, it's part of the evidence gathering process. We are trying to tell a story. We are trying to figure out why a spirit is there, what their motivation is, what are they trying to say, who are they trying to communicate with. I believe that being an investigator, you have a deeper responsibility to the spirits and to the living people around the spirits to kind of bridge that gap. You know, all the equipment we use is all it really does is just sort of bridge the gap between the living and the dead. One's trying to communicate with the other can't hear, and we bring the stuff that allows them to hear. And we've learned so much about spirits that we wouldn't have known without doing an investigation. But, you know, in the places that aren't as well known, there's still some story left to uncover. There's still a value to that information. The locations value it, the ownership values it, the management values it. And those are my favorite locations. It's why we keep going back to Grapevine Farms. It's why we've kept going back to a lot of the locations. It's why we went back to the Seneca Falls Historical Society, which we'll talk about later in the episode. These are places that actually care about what we're finding, and then once we show them the evidence, they want to know more. They're like, okay, how do we learn more? What do we need to do to learn more? Those are our favorite locations, the ones where the evidence means something. And that's what we like. It's not what everybody loves. It's what we as paranormal investigators, that we love to do, we live to do. And those are the locations that we can't get enough of. So then, invariably, the next question is the opposite of that. What was our least favorite location to investigate? I will not name names here, but I will tell you that once again, the answer is it's a type of location that is our least favorite to investigate. Just as much as I said in the previous answer that we love locations where the management, the ownership, the staff really care about what we're finding, the exact opposite is just the worst. When they do not care at all. They don't care what you're doing. They don't care how you're doing it. They don't, it's just, there's just no interest in it. And that has happened. It happened to us much earlier on, because I think what we did get better at over time was booking toward what we knew we liked. At first, we were just looking for haunted locations where we could go. And that consisted mostly of renting a haunted room in a haunted hotel and seeing what we could do. And it didn't go well because the ownership of the hotel just cares that you're paying for the room. Or in a couple cases, they're like, well, you should probably rent 2 or 3 rooms. And well, of course you're going to say that. They don't care to see the evidence when we're done. They don't care about what we're doing when we're there. And those are the ones we don't like. Me, personally, and Emily and I disagree a little bit on this, I am not the biggest fan of the iconic haunted locations. And what I mean by that is I'm not a fan of the places that you probably see on television. And the reason I say that is, first of all, it's really expensive to go there. I mean, we're talking between $800 and $1,200 for one night of an investigation. And I guess if you have a group of 12 people, that makes sense. But it's usually Emily, myself, and one of four other people, either Tim, Tracy, Rhea, or Margot, or whoever else is joining us from the location. And that's expensive. But the other reason is that we've done these locations. And I look, we get a lot of good evidence at them. They are haunted, or else they wouldn't be as popular as they are. But most of them don't care what we find. We're not going to uncover anything new. We're not, we're there on a Saturday, and there's another group that paid $1,000 coming in on a Sunday. So, and there's another one Monday, and another one Tuesday, and every night, the spirits must get really tired of that. But every night there's somebody new coming in, so they don't have time to care what we find. And look, I get it. It's how these locations stay in business. It's how these iconic places are able to operate. So they wouldn't exist if it wasn't for this. And we will do them. There are iconic locations that we do want to go do. It's just that it's not something that we enjoy as much as doing the diamond in the rough ones that I talked about before. So really what it comes down to is our favorite locations are the ones where we can uncover stories that are new and the people around it are really invested in it. And our least favorite are the ones where, well, they have a different group coming in every day. There's not a whole lot of interest on what we're finding, and we're really not going to be able to add anything to the story. So the good news on all this is we've learned what we like. So now we mostly just try to get into places that we know we're going to most likely really enjoy. And we do. Emily very rarely books a place that isn't worth the trip. And you have to be like that. You have to know as an investigator what you like and what you don't. We don't, like, for example, we're not qualified to be demonologists or exorcists, so we don't go looking for that because that's outside of our realm of expertise. Don't open a door you don't know how to close. So stick with what you like, stick within your expertise. And to be honest, there's so many variety of different kinds of haunts and different kinds of locations out there. Regardless of what you like, you should have no problem at least finding places to reach out to investigate. At the last event we did up in Barkeeter Chocolates in upstate New York, we got a great question. I really liked it, and that's why I wanted to include it in this episode, actually. One of the attendees asked if we ever felt in danger while we were investigating. That is a really good question, and it's a good question for a multitude of reasons. There are many ways that you can feel in danger while investigating, and not all of it is paranormal. I'll start with paranormal on my answer, though. The answer's no, from a paranormal standpoint. Now, I have felt what I would describe as like a fight or flight kind of feeling, like, ooh, I'm in a space where somebody doesn't want me to be. I think everybody who's ever investigated the paranormal has felt that, and you can decide how you want to handle that, based on how you feel in the moment. Generally, the few times I have felt that, I've kind of just said, all right, well, I'm just going to stay here, and if they want me to leave, they'll open the door for me. And that's what you feel like. There's certain places. There was a room 218 at the Worcester Inn, for example. Very like, ooh, I'm not really welcome here. There's something that doesn't want me here. That was very strong there. There are places like that. And there's an obvious one. When we were at Burlington County Prison in New Jersey, I went into the solitary confinement space by myself and kind of felt like, ew, this isn't the most comfortable thing in the world. Now, some of that could have been claustrophobia, but there was definitely a feeling of, something doesn't want me here. And being that Emily got pushed down the stairs about 45 minutes later, I think it's safe to say that something didn't want us there. But that kind of fight or flight feeling, I think, is a better way to describe it than being in danger. I've never felt that a spirit was going to harm me. It doesn't mean I never expected. I mean, you always have to expect the unexpected. That's why you hold on to railings. We've talked about that in previous episodes. You have to be ready for any danger that might come your way, but from a paranormal standpoint, I've never felt in danger. Now, from a physical and property standpoint, there's been a couple of moments. We don't investigate abandoned buildings. I don't feel anybody should. That's and it has nothing to do with the paranormal. That has to do with safety and legality, because everybody owns something. You know, if a place is abandoned, somebody owns it, and if you're there without their permission, that's called trespassing. But sometimes locations can be, I guess, run down is the correct word, and they're owned by somebody, and they invite you to come investigate. And you've got to be careful. The number one example of this to me is the Seneca Falls Machines building that we've investigated a couple of times. It's a great location. It's like a time capsule. I mean, there's still Rolodexes on the desk. It's like everybody was beamed up to the Starship Enterprise and left everything behind. This folder back here, this yellow folder, is actually something the owner gave me. If you're watching this in the video form, from there. It was in a desk, and it's just all about supply chain stuff. Like, it's all there. And the problem is there's also holes on the floor. So when you're walking around there at night, you have to be very aware. Now, it's one specific area where it's the weakest. But again, you are walking around in a building that is quite old. It's run down. At least it was then. I know they've been fixing it up, and it's been a year or two since we've been there. But that kind of danger of, I don't think this floor is very strong. I don't think this staircase is very strong. When we investigated the Bull's Head Inn up in Cobleskill, there were parts of the attic that didn't have like a floor. Like if you stepped, you would step right through and you'd end up on the top of the owner's desk below. So that kind of danger for us is way more common than feeling like, a spirit's going to come after me or a spirit's going to get me or whatever. The danger we have felt has been from the physical things around us, not the paranormal things around us. Another great question we get in very, very many forms, but it's the same question, is basically, when you formed your group, when you decided to stop just going to events and you decided to become Orange County, New York Paranormal, what is the thing that surprised you the most? Or what is the thing that you didn't expect to happen? And there's several of them. And it's funny, when I answer this question in a group setting, people are kind of surprised by it, I think. Again, that is a product of the television shows, because again, a 42-minute episode does not encompass anything close to what a paranormal investigation actually is. If you want more detail on that, if you go back a couple of episodes, one of our podcast episodes is called More Than Just Investigating, where I just talk about the entire process from booking a location to putting out the episode and sharing the evidence with the ownership of everything that goes into an investigation. And that, to me, was the most surprising part, is that there is so much more to this, than just going to a group event with a digital recorder and listening to it later when you get home. Like, from everything, it's so much more work than I thought it would be. And I think that surprises people, that it's like, yeah, this is a very time-consuming thing. It takes 40 hours to review evidence from an investigation. And that's why we tend to put out our videos like a month or two after the investigation, because we have jobs. This is not our full-time job, and this is our spare time. And of course, there's work, there's family, there's obligations. Emily and I do enjoy being married, so you got to stay married. So there's stuff you have to do there in terms of just making sure your life is fulfilled before I can sit down and stare at 6 hours of a video of me sitting trying to play checkers with the ghosts of children. There are things that take precedence. So it's so much work. And I think I've said this in a previous episode. I think that's the reason why a lot of owners of locations tell us that they don't see the evidence that comes from the investigation. I think it's because it's so time consuming to look at it that a lot of folks don't. And I'm not saying anything bad about any groups here. I'm just saying that's the theory, is, everybody wants to be an investigator till you have to stare at 40 hours of video of a room with nothing happening. So the biggest surprise for me was just the sheer amount of time that it takes up. And where, the investigation part is the best part. And, the 5% of the process, you deal with the 95% of the other stuff to do the 5%. That's how addicting it is. That's how much fun it is. That's how, how great it is. That's our passion for it. It is worth it to do all the rest of it just to be able to do that. But the amount of work really surprised me. And I know Emily would say, just to give another perspective, I believe I know Emily would say that the biggest surprise for her would be the people we've met along the way. Neither of us expected to make the kind of friends we have made by doing this. And you see them in our videos. Rhea and Margot have become really good friends of ours along with investigating with us. Tim and Tracy have been great friends for years now, since we pretty much started. And we met them through investigating the places they owned and managed. And we had them investigate with us because that's how we do it. And they have become really good friends even outside of this. I mean, we see Tim and Tracy outside of this. Rhea, Margot, we've hung out with them outside of this too. It's great that we've met so many amazing people, and that's just the 4 people who are still investigating with us. We've met people on the way like Jim Bulow, God rest his soul, the former owner of the Worcester Inn. I mean, he was the first person we really befriended in this process, and Jim is the reason that we're still here doing this, because he was the first one to believe in us. And again, we met people like Tina Breslow, who we did some events with and are still really good friends with, and just a lot of folks we've met along the way. And I'm leaving some out of people we've met along the way that have really been, Emily says it all the time, it's the thing that shocks her the most about it. So for me, it was the sheer amount of work of doing all this, and for Emily, it's the fact that we've made some really close friends while doing this. Completely unexpected, but both really good. So the last 2 questions I want to address in this episode, and if you have questions that you'd like included in an episode down the road, when you like and subscribe and review on the podcast platform, leave your question in the review. And if you're watching this on Facebook or on YouTube, just leave a question in the comments section. I'll answer the question to you through your comment, but I'll also potentially include it in an upcoming episode. So, because we've got a ton of these questions that we can do. I'm not going to do this every episode, but every once in a while we're going to throw a mailbag in, because I love interacting with people, and I love getting these questions. But the last 2 questions are pretty related and common. And the question is, to me, I get all the time at events, is where do we get our equipment? Because we are equipment centric. We are using recorders and cameras and every you've seen it, we probably have it, and we've probably used it. And there's a lot of different places you can go to get equipment. It's expensive, and there's just nothing you can really do about that. The place that I buy most of our cameras from there's a company called Ghost Stop. It's one word, and it's a website. I've bought all of our full spectrum cameras from them, because with a camera, man, you don't want to mess around with a camera. Like, they're modded to see in full spectrum, they're modded to see in UV, so I think that's important. But in terms of a lot of the equipment, I have bought from different places. Ghost St. Augustine, I believe that's the name of the company. They are another one I've purchased from in the past. Another thing I've started doing is there's a lot of folks on eBay who have come out. Now, you got to be careful, but there are a lot of paranormal investigators that have joined eBay who actually have knowledge of engineering and electricity and way more into that than I am, who actually realize how expensive paranormal equipment is and have started an eBay business of just making it less expensive. And honestly, I've met some really good folks through that who I've bought some really good stuff from. And it's less expensive. It works just the same. And it works. But again, no matter where you get it from, it's expensive. And there are ways of getting equipment that's used in paranormal investigation that doesn't have to be through any specialized place. It's sort of a running gag with Colin, who's the head of Clifton Paranormal, who we did an interview with last week, where he would ask me, hey, where'd you get that? And I would say, oh, Amazon. Because, there are things that are in our everyday lives that can be used for paranormal equipment. Things like motion sensors, for example. There's motion sensors for doors, and they sense movement regardless of the movement. We use those in investigation. The K2 meter wasn't built to sense paranormal activity. It was built to look for electromagnetic energy and wiring and stuff. But it's used in the paranormal world. Heck, we use cat toys. The little balls that light up that sense motion, those are cat toys. Like, there's all kinds of stuff out there that isn't meant to be used for paranormal, but through the fact that paranormal spent so long not being mainstream, people just learned that it could be used and learned how to use it. And it's all part of, it's in the cases with all the stuff that's specialized as well. And anything that senses energy or motion, you can use to investigate the paranormal. I'm curious if any of you have anything like household that you've either seen used or have used in an investigation. Leave a comment in the review or on underneath the video if you have. But those, those kind of pieces of equipment, those are more common. The stuff where you get specialized, the Ovulus, the SLS, the structured light sensor cameras, Mel meters, spirit boxes, those can get expensive if you're going that deep. But honestly, you can buy a camcorder off of Amazon for less than $150. If it has night vision, that's the handheld cameras we're using. So there are ways to do it where you don't have to spend a ton of money. All the camera rigs that we use for stationary cameras are separate pieces I've purchased and just built a rig up for to save money because of how much less expensive I can do it building a camera rig than buying one pre-made. Really just be careful. If it's something that has to be modded, if you're not gifted in modding, buy it from someone who knows what they're doing. One of those places I've talked about, not sponsored or anything, although it'd be nice. Those are the places I have had a lot of success with, that I actually like their stuff and have had a lot of success with them and continue to be a customer with even now. Which then spirals into the next question, which is, what equipment is useful and what isn't? And it's funny. It's like on an investigation by investigation basis. Like, for example, Seneca Falls Historical Society, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, Spirit Box was the most useful piece of equipment we could have possibly had in that investigation. Other nights, doesn't do anything. Some nights, the K2s pull their weight. Sometimes they don't. That's why we have so much stuff, because everything you bring, only some of it's going to actually get any kind of evidence on. So that's why you use as much as you can to maximize your chances of getting something back in terms of evidence. But in terms of overall equipment, some stuff we have found to be way more useful than others. There are pieces of equipment we have that we purchased, we were very excited to get, and really it just we just haven't had any success with it. The paranormal puck is the first one that pops to mind of something that we've purchased that was expensive, and that's the one where you can use your tablet. And it sort of works like a phonetic generator. You send the tablet, you ask a question out, you type it out, it sends it into the electromagnetic spectrum, and the spirit can respond through the tablet, through the device. And I always, when I talk in crayon about it, I always say it's kind of like text messaging with a spirit. And when you watch it on television, man, it looks pretty cool. But what they don't show you are all the responses you get that have nothing to do with anything you're talking about, which just ruins the entire thing. Because if the answers are going to come back random, sure, a random answer is going to come back that's relevant to what you're saying. And when randomness is part of the equation, it's not a good tool for investigating. Some groups may have had a ton of luck with this thing, but of the one piece of equipment we have that I have found not to be useful at all is the paranormal puck. So anyway, those are some of the answers to some of the more common questions or some of the more recent questions we have received through Facebook, through events, through reviews. If you have a question, please submit it. As I said before, we will be happy to answer it, and we may include it in our next mailbag episode. So thank you so much for the questions. keep them coming. And as part of what we love about this is just sharing what we've learned, the knowledge that we can impart, and and much like when we do events, it's fun to teach people how this works, how it's done, or at least how we do it, and that's just part of the fun. So last week, we aired our latest investigation episode from the Seneca Falls Historical Society. Huge thank you to them for having us back. It's a location we've investigated 3 times. And a nice thing about doing that is that you kind of get such a feel for the place that you know what you want to do. And a few episodes ago, we talked about trigger objects. Well, there's trigger objects built into the floor of the Becker Mansion in the form of those checkerboards. And in the past, we have spent 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes trying to get something to happen there. And this time I absolutely wanted to spend the entire investigation there. I wanted to make that my focus for the investigation. This was the first investigation I really didn't have a huge active role in. I did do the Becker bedroom part at the end, but I sat there for a couple hours and not a lot happened. There's a reason why you don't see a lot in the video. What did happen, though, was an amazing spirit box session where the spirits are just rolling out names. I mean, we caught an EVP of Rhea downstairs, but the spirit box on the stairs with me said my name, said Margot's name, which she's going to be thrilled about. And it actually, for the first time, I spoke with those folks before the video came out, we got the name Becker. That is the first time during a paranormal investigation that they have gotten evidence of the family name being said in any way that they could actually understand it. It was clear. It's very clear. Becker. What is your name? Becker. It says it. It's clear. And that's the first time that they actually have gotten it. So that's exciting for us. And you should have seen when we did the review, they were all excited about it because that's really relevant. That's really new. It was the Becker Mansion. So to get Becker when you ask what their name is, yeah, that's what I would call pretty relevant. And man, the spirit box was the star of the show in that. And it's probably the most spirit box voices we've gotten in a single investigation, if not ever, in a really long time. And it was great. We got all that stuff on the stairs, but we also got stuff in the Becker bedroom, which is funny because the stuff in the Becker bedroom kind of sounded annoyed. And, it's like, is anybody here? No. Who didn't want my hand? That was me. What's your name? Me. It sounded like a spirit that was tired of talking to people. And truth be told, I don't blame them. Seneca Falls Historical Society does not let a ton of groups go through. In fact, they actually try to limit it to one a month or so, just so the spirits don't get tired of it. But apparently the Becker bedroom is a place where not only do they get a lot of spirit box voices, but they also get a lot of like, oh God, there's people here again, kind of a mentality, which is great. I look, dealing with the dead is not that much different than dealing with the living. We get annoyed. I don't like constantly having visitors, and spirits probably don't too. And they're just sitting around and, here comes Dan again with his 13 cameras and wanting to play checkers all night long. Let's, really, we got to talk to this guy. And, and there's a place there where it's like, get out, go, when we're at the top of the stairs. And they're probably sick of us. Thankfully, they gave us some evidence, some good EVPs there, a lot of light anomalies happening during that investigation. And it was a fun investigation, as most of them are. And it was one of the first investigations where I wasn't involved that much. And when I watched the video, it was Rhea, Margot, and Emily doing most of the investigating and staying on topic most of the time. There were some moments where I'm like, what are they talking about when I was watching the video? But that's always fun. And there's actually if you watch the video all the way to the end, after the final logo pops up, there is an outtake from that, because several times Margot turned the camera and said something directly to me, who she knew would be watching the footage later, which was very funny. And so for the first time, I put like an outtake at the end of the video. So kind of your reward for hanging through the 17 minutes of it. But it's 17 minutes worth hanging through. It's a great location. They have a little bit of everything, and we got stuff out of the toy room this time. We used to get a lot of light anomalies in there, but actually capturing a couple of voices, that's the first time. There's a bear in there that apparently moves around. We didn't really see much of that, but we did capture an EVP around it. It just didn't have anything to do with that. But again, it's one of those locations that just has a little bit of everything, and it has such a history with not only the spirits of the Becker family, but also potential spirits of the people who worked there, like Mary, like the people who, were the people who worked with and on the house in the basement, and just a lot of different people there. And the nice thing about, when you do a museum or historical society, every time you go back, the story is different. They actually do a lot of research. I was talking to Daisy the other day, and she said she's actually been uncovering research on the families and of these people and what happened to them. And it's actually helping her connect some of the EVPs that we're getting to why we may have captured that voice. And that's great. When you can link the history to the paranormal evidence and it helps paint a clearer picture, that's kind of why you become a paranormal investigator, and why, as a paranormal investigator, you like to go to museums, because you do get to help complete that story. So it's a great location. Like I said, we've been back there 3 times, so we like it. And we've got more investigations coming up. The next investigation episode, which should be out soon, is the Omen Theater. I've been talking about it for a while. We haven't had a chance to review that with the people yet, which is why the Seneca Falls video came out first, even though the investigation happened after Omen. That will be coming. That's a good one, too. I love investigating theaters, and we did Omen. We've got Clifton investigation that happened that we did with Clifton Paranormal, and many more to come. And we're starting to book events for October, which is great too. And it's great to be busy. It is very good to be busy, and it's great to have all kinds of things to talk about, and to be getting questions like the ones early in the episode to answer. So there you go, the Seneca Falls Historical Society, aka the Becker Mansion. Great investigation, fun video with some really good evidence. If you haven't checked that out, please do. There is a link in the description of the episode that'll take you directly to it on YouTube. I'll also put it on the end screen. If you hang out to the end, it'll pop up. You can just click on it to watch that, because it really worked out well. And, it's when you investigate the paranormal, there's all kinds of stuff that you get asked, and the questions and the answers that we did here earlier. I hope that if you had that question, I hope the answer was sufficient. If you have another one, please submit it. And it's what you do. It's when we investigate the paranormal, you're dealing with spirits, you're dealing with telling the story of a location, of a place, of a person, but you also have to work with the living people around the spirits to help bring that story together, to help them coexist with each other. That's one of the main reasons that you love it, that we love it so much, is because we get to do that. And people are fascinated by it. And people, whenever we do an event, people show up to them because it's a realm that folks are fascinated with. And for us, it's great. It's great because, we don't accept any of the proceeds. We don't ask for any of the proceeds. It all goes to the locations when we do these events. So it helps keep these events going. So these events are actually not only good for you if you go to them, but they're also good for the place that holds them. And when we do these events, people are curious about what it is that we do. It's a very unusual hobby that we have. And they're going to have questions. And the fact of the matter is, if you go to an event like this where you have a paranormal group that's answering questions or talking, ask any questions that you want. Because while the question you have may seem odd to you, to us, it's all normal. Thank you for listening to the Paranormal Podcast, and we'll catch you next time.